the subtitle, How Jesus Resonates Through Culture, I actually stole from Belinda Calabia, and she also spent hours giving tips on how to do these things. So I appreciate that from her. But her idea about resonating is very good to keep in mind, and it really helps us think about the mechanism by which relationships work. And so, if I can, there we go. Maybe this will work. There we go. All right. So if you remember from high school science class, one simple example of resonance is you have two identical tuning forks, and they're at different ends of the room, and the teacher hits one of them, and its vibrations cause sympathetic vibrations in the other one. And that's a simple one. Chemical resonance is a better example, but a little harder to depict. So resonate. So how does Jesus impact culture and impact us? Well, it's kind of a resonance idea. I think he stimulates part of our image of God. We all have a different slice, different strengths and weaknesses, but we all have some aspect of the image of God, and Jesus works on that and helps grow us. All right, what's the image of God? Well, the Trinity is God. It's all about love, relationship, and creativity. So what does love produce? Well, it produces good things, like people that found hospitals. And the first hospital was started by a follower of Jesus. And people that spend hours helping others learn how to give better presentations. Caring does good things. And creativity creates beautiful things, great art, music, and literature. So my image or my picture of how this works is Jesus changed human history one person at a time. And we can change one person at a time if we form a relationship with them. So that's the model we have. All right, this is perhaps my favorite book from you and Kathy on Always Be Ready. And it's a marvelous story of how by being prepared, the Holy Spirit brings opportunities to you. It's very inspiring in that regard and other regards. So what are we trying to do? Well, we live in a culture where a substantial portion of the people you encounter or the people in your family consider Jesus and religion perhaps irrelevant, unimportant. So it starts with getting their attention. Then, of course, the end, after a year or whatever it takes, after an end, they form a link. But the first thing is to get their attention. Here's an example of how unreligious America is becoming. There are roughly 3 out of 10 people that you know or in your family may have no religious affiliation, not be much interested in it at all. So the point is maybe we can get some of those folks interested in a unique kind of way. This book on apologetics is very famous. This is the 10-year edition, which came out some time ago. It's wonderful. It's a bit softer than reason to believe people perhaps are used to. We use logic and we use reason and we use evidence from science and that sort of thing because we tend to interact with people that are swayed by that sort of discussion. But Greg says, well, there's really two sides to the picture. His motto is there's sowing kind of evangelism and there's reaping kind of evangelism. And I think what he's pushing in his books has to do with the sowing kind, the open-handed, the more gentle, plant seeds and hope they grow kind, as opposed to using a very sharp instrument like a scythe that cuts that in a sense logic and reason force people into a position. Many people resist that sort of thing. Well, Greg has improved his or upped his two-phase model of the sowing and reaping, and he adds one other thing. He says now we're in a season where not only sowing and reaping, but the thoughtful evangelist has to be like a farmer or gardener and painstakingly prepare the soil. And part of the painstaking preparation, I'm saying, is figuring out some way to get people to pay some attention to Jesus. But to give you assurance that I believe this can end in a reaping step, I think one way to end it after the person gets attention and you get their attention and they start thinking about it. You could use the famous C.S. Lewis approach. It's based on Matthew 16:15. But who do you say that I am? Remember, Jesus was talking to the disciples and asked them, who do others say I am, and who do you say I am? Well, that's maybe the most important question there is. There is no more important question than that. And if you get somebody to think about that idea, because it has to do with eternity and your soul and all that. So many will end up saying, well, he's a good moral teacher and that's about it. But Jesus foreclosed that by the claims he made about himself. So if you look at what he said, you can't say he's a good moral teacher. You're left with really only four choices rationally. He's either a legend or mostly legend, made up, or he's a liar about being the Son of God, or a lunatic, or he's really the Lord. If you could get somebody to face up to that, I think you know how that's likely to end up if they're open-minded. Okay, so tonight it'll be less than 50 minutes. We'll do a flyby of Jesus' impact on various areas of culture. The visual arts, literature, music. I won't talk much about education, just a little bit. And other religions. Jesus had a profound effect on other religions. And this was the surprise in the book that I found. And it's really, from this book, an amazing piece of scholarship. Jim Wallace is a very, very good scholar. Kirby alluded to the fact that weaving through all of his books, he talks about a case, and there is a very interesting case, and some people might be interested in that book just from the fact that he uses the same techniques that he used in solving a very difficult case to show the cultural impact of Jesus. Okay, so here's the bottom line. A large fraction of folks are interested in some part of culture. And you can't really tell much about a person unless you get to know them, and you have to ask them questions and find out what their area of culture is. Very likely, Jesus had a big impact on that area that these people are already interested in. So you use facts and things about his impact in that area that people already care about, and it may get them to turn their attention to Jesus. So that's the idea. All right. So so in a sense, we hear, oh, there's two books. There's the Bible and there's nature, and Kirby talked about that at the beginning. But there's really a third book, in a sense, culture. So to me, the heavens and declare, and culture declare the glory of God. That's another way of saying what I'm talking about. Fully half of the book, Person of Interest, is about the lead up to Jesus, all the things that happened before that lead up to, Egypt, they started with founded paper, and Persian, among other things, started the first postal system. The Greek Empire resulted in the Greek language being universally used throughout the later Roman Empire. And then the Roman Empire, the big contribution relative to Jesus is the peace that it imposed on the empire. And so that's this is a picture of some of the times and how Rome really pacified the world for about 200 years or so, and it was a major help in spreading the faith. So the overall conclusion from the first half of the book is much evidence shows that the world stage seemed carefully set up, almost designed for Jesus' appearance. He came at the right place at the right time for Christianity to spread. And the way Jim approaches this is by the various things that he considers the other religions and the expectations the other religions had concerning God is one of them. The various cultural things like paper and language and that sort of thing. And then the prophecy, his handling of prophecy is particularly interesting. And I may put together a talk on that, but he shows that 4 of the major prophets are unquestionably prophetic. The extra to biblical evidence supporting their prophecies is amazing and all that. So the window he ended up saying is about 99 years. Starts the 29 BC. He came from the beginning of Peace of Rome, Pax Romana. And then the 70 was defined by Daniel's prophecy about the destruction of the temple. And so that's a 100-year window, and Jesus was right in the middle. Very interesting stuff. Okay, so but if you read if you find out about the first half of this book, you could talk to a history buff, somebody that really cares about history, loves it and all that, and say, oh, I came across something very interesting. A scholar studied the history prior to the birth of Jesus and concluded there was an ideal 99-year window that would be perfect for someone to start a new religion. And guess what? Jesus was born during that window. And you wouldn't have to say much more. The person might bite on that, and it might start a wonderful conversation about that evidence. But we'll get into now some of the meat of the book, a flyby of it. The visual arts, in painting, every art genre from the earliest times, first century BC, every one of them has depictions of Jesus. And the masters in each one of those genres depicted Jesus. He is present in all of art through history. And not only just the genres, but everywhere art is done, he's depicted around the world. And one interesting fact Jim points out is that if you look at Buddha and the representations of Buddha in different countries around the world, he looks pretty much the same. But not Jesus. Jesus inspires art, but the expression of art in the different countries has a different style. So Christianity, people say, oh, it's closed-minded and it's legalistic and all that sort of thing. Christianity is open-handed. Jesus inspires creativity, but he doesn't limit it. And that is something worth spreading information. So to test this out, I picked the middle genre at the bottom of that circle. By the way, you'll get all these overheads. I'll send the slides to Kirby, and he can spread it or post it. So you'll have all these, the picture. But in the middle was post-impressionist. I didn't have any idea what that was. But I thought, well, let's say I have a friend. And this friend perhaps could be pointed to Jesus. And a soul is at stake. It's worth my time do research, to find out something we can talk about where I could eventually sneak in Jesus into the conversation. So one way of doing it is just say, hey, I'd like to know more about art. Can you help me tell me something about the top masters in post-impressionism and that. Find out which master he likes and then look it up. That's one way to do that. But what I did was I just did a quick literature search about who the big guns were in post-impressionism, and Paul Gauguin came up. And quickly, this particular self-portrait of his, he did a few self-portraits. This one struck me. I looked at it, and I think it's very interesting. And it's because he believed that there were two forces that shaped his personality. One was divine, and one was savage and not so nice. And that's how he depicted the divine, was Jesus. And I, as I said, not very much interested in art, but I could get interested in it if somebody I cared about was interested in it. And I have a pet theory about culture. And here's my pet theory. Every area of human knowledge that has a sizable number of intelligent followers can be somewhat interesting to you if you give it a chance. And I have found that's true for me. In this example, as I say, I'm not much interested in painting, but I was very interested in what Gauguin was trying to say about himself and how he chose to do it. And I found out recently that a person I knew from when she was like 3 years old or something lived on one of the neighboring farms, and she went with my sister to London on a tour, and they stopped at the British Museum, and she really frustrated my sister. Oh, I should tell you, she worked hard. She was kind of a tomboy. That's all I remembered about her, really, until I heard the story. But after high school, she studied to be a welder, and she became a welder in a steel mill. So she's a retired steel mill welder, and she was standing and frustrated my sister because she stood in front of a painting, crying because of the beauty of that painting. And it turns out she's very much interested in art. And so the point is, you can't tell unless you talk to people what area they might be interested in. And if they find it interesting, it's worth giving it a try to see if you could find it interesting, because being interested in the same thing is the basis of friendship. That's not just me talking, that's others. But here, it turns out I listened to a talk about discovering beauty. I was heavy-duty Christian, Russ Ramsey. This is from the C.S. Lewis Institute. So I say, if you care to look into that. But he talks about how paintings work, and how they draw your interest and how things happen with them. And it's very interesting, and he relates it, of course, to God and Jesus. So you might want to check that out. So I honestly believe that's true. Now, here's something very important that Jim Wallace discovered in his research. And he picked the shortest gospel and said how many major stories in it, and he broke it down to 55 major stories about Jesus in the Gospel of Mark. And he discovered that you can reconstruct from paintings, let's say, all 55 of those stories. You can see them depicted. And so he says you can get to know the person of Jesus from art alone. And it turns out it's true of music, literature, the writings of top scientists, any area he looked at, he discovered that you can, if you look at enough of it, you can put together a picture of Jesus good enough to be interested in him. So that's the point, that these various cultural areas can help you point people to Jesus. All right, in literature, one thing Jesus did was redefine the concept of hero in literature. Before Jesus, all the heroes were killers or men of violence. They fought in armies and led armies, or they fought dragons, or they fought each other. Violence was the how to be a hero. After Jesus, the word hero includes savior, people who sacrifice for other people, firemen who rush into burning buildings, policemen who risk their lives daily to keep us safe, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, different kinds of heroes, and Jesus is the one that started that. Here's a quote from Napoleon that I think really summarizes that. He says, Alexander, Caesar, Charlemagne, and I myself have founded great empires. But upon what did these creations of our genius depend? Upon force. Jesus alone founded his empire upon love. And to this very day, millions will die for him. I think I understand something of human nature, and I tell you, all these men, that is Alexander, Caesar, Charlemagne, and I am a man, none else is like him. Jesus Christ was more than a man. I think that's a marvelous quote. So if you have a friend that's a history buff or a military history buff, that's one to keep in mind. On the subject of heroes, Frank Turek just last year came out with a book, Hollywood Heroes, and it shows the similarity between various situations and heroes in various Hollywood productions that are characterized from parts of Jesus' nature. He impacts movies quite a bit. A person looked into the books in the Library of Congress, and it was a big research project. It was in 1999. There are 532 miles of bookshelves in 1999. My guess is it's much bigger now, of books. He researched and looked into them and all, and found out how many books are written by famous people. Jesus swamps everybody else. Number two in this study ended up almost only, just a little over half. But look at some big guns like Lenin. Lenin and Marx together are less than half. And they impacted the world quite a bit. But the point is, Jesus inspires literature in an amazing, amazing way. Here's a different source looking at Google Books, that same scholar who looked into this. The answer still came out the same. Jesus is out in front of the number two by almost double. And so those are factoids that might give people pause for thought. To say, well, maybe I should pay attention to him. Here's another fact about book publishing and things like that. There are over 200 Christian book publishers, which is more than Buddhism and Hinduism. Those are religions much older than Christianity, and Islam and Baha'i, much newer than Christianity, combined. Jesus influenced literature to the point that swamps other religions. Okay. So you have a friend that loves literature, not interested in the Bible. You could say, wow, I recently found out Jesus inspired more literature than anybody else ever. And maybe you could get them to talk about that. Okay. So here's music impact. Here's the same sort of chart that about musical, genres. Well, this is about musical eras. And Jesus is represented and well represented by the people that created um, music in every era there was in music, and in a big way. So the and not only the compositions, but the tools of music. Followers of Jesus invented musical notation. Um, they created instruments and the use of complex um, harmonies and various things. Um, so his impact, the impact of Jesus' followers on music is astounding. But in a more contemporary way, what Jim Wallace did is he looked at the top 100 music artists using different charts, about 3 different charts he looked at in the last 50 years. Every one of them performed at least one thing related to Jesus. Every one of them, the top artists. But to kind of test that out, I wondered what it would be. I picked a group that my daughter used to listen to, The Doors, and that gives you an idea how old I am. And to find out if they ever depicted Jesus, and so that I could use that in conversation with somebody who happens to be a, a Doors fan. Um, and oh, I should tell that story. All right, so what I found very quickly was this article, and I'll read some of this article. It says, arguably, one of the most beautifully intense moments of any Doors rock song, rock concert, is when Morrison, I guess he's one of the Doors, screams, Persian night, see the light, save us, Jesus, save us. Those are from a song they did. And those lines refer to the wise men from the Magi visiting, following the Star of Bethlehem, going to see Jesus. And so it worked. I easily found something like that. Um, okay, I won't talk a lot about education and science and all that, but Jesus, founders of many disciplines, basically followers of Jesus have sponsored education around the world. Um, and in this one area, hospitals, Jesus followers found the first and many hospitals, more than any other faith group ever, kind of thing. Um, but in terms of, if you have a friend that's I don't know, metallurgist or whatever they are, you could find some quotes from some of the leaders, early leaders in those disciplines, and you'll find out that Jesus is quoted by scientists quite a bit. Um, Something perhaps more compelling would be to look at Nobel Prize. So there was a person that looked up the Nobel Prizes. I believe this is 19. I have the year in the next slide, and the portion of different religions, and Christ followers are very well represented in Nobel Prizes. Um, so anybody that says Christianity people don't aren't thinkers, this will help. Yeah, 1995 was that study. It's probably dropped off since then, but at least in 1995 that was the case. And the interesting thing is, in up to that time, how many high percentage. Oops, I didn't mean that. Such a high percentage of winners of the Peace Prize were followers of the Prince of Peace. I mean, things like this can get attention if you can weave them into the conversation in some graceful way. I think it's possible to. I hope it's possible to incline people to consider Jesus, think about him a little bit, and look into him. But here's some of the, you'll see these when you get the overheads if you care to look at it, the history of education and how it ended up leading to the first universities. That came from the first, well, early Christians wrote a lot to each other, letters and things. And then there, in the monasteries, there were lots of academic things and cathedral schools and Christian or followers of Christ pushed universal education in public schools and things like that quite a bit. And anyhow, it ended up into the founders of these, the first three universities were all followers of Jesus. So there's a progression there that is, some people might be interested in that. But here's the big one that was a surprise for me. Jesus influenced other religions in an amazing way. And the original religions that existed before Jesus came on the scene ended up modifying and or merging. Their later writings mention him in generally very favorable ways. And Tim Wallace explains that about each of the religions that existed before Jesus came on the scene. But it's also true of the religions that came after Jesus came on, like Islam. You can learn a lot about Jesus, favorable things about Jesus from the Quran. And likewise, Baha'i and other things that have religious systems that have come since time of Jesus, they all incorporate him, claim he's one of theirs, kind of thing. So I have a personal example of how I intend to use this. Haven't had a chance quite yet, but I'm looking forward to it. My granddaughter-in-law was raised in a Buddhist home, and I'm preparing to have further conversations with her dad, who's really a great guy and a serious Buddhist. He reads quite a lot. So I did an internet search on Buddhist writings about Jesus, and I came across this this website that if you're interested, you might want to check it out. So was Jesus a Buddhist? Is the title of this essay, and it's very well researched, well argued. And here's the answer in quotes at the bottom here is, the answer is not yes or no, but rather to what extent Jesus was or was not a Buddhist. He said the identities and the parallels between he used the term legend, but he believes them. He believes them. They're just the stories about Buddha and Jesus. And between their deeds and statements requires explanation. They are too close and too specific to be explained by a presumed set of universalist truths and ethics. In other words, he's saying this is more than just universal goodness that all of us can see and learn on our own, apart from any religion. He says this is much deeper than that, and much more specific. So I intend to use this and other things when in conversations with this now person that's now one of my relatives. And I haven't met many Hindus. Every one of them I've met, I've liked, by the way. But I'm tracking down, if I run into any and have a chance, I'll have a chance. I'll track down some Hindu writings. The quotes in Jim Wallace's book are mostly from Mahatma Gandhi, but there's much more behind that, and he has extensive references that I could tune into, and it's worth it because there are souls at stake. So I'm willing to put in that time if I think there's a chance that I can weave Jesus into a conversation. So then once you get the person's attention, hopefully you do, you say, well, was he a great moral teacher or not? Well, actually, he didn't leave that option open. He's got to be either I didn't have legend here, but legend, liar, lunatic, or Lord. And that's the reaping part downstream of the beginning. But here's an example about forming relationships and strengthening relationships based on shared interest. And basically, I'm trying to be a better granddad than I was a dad. And so I'm using a strategy from C.S. Lewis's book, Four Loves, about in his section on friendship. It's also in early Greek writing. Friendships are built on shared interests. So, and I told you, as I believe all subjects folks are interested in, I can be interested in if I give them a chance. So I've started reading books with my grandsons that they pick, and it's wonderful. I've read at least one book with each of my 5 grandsons. I'm currently reading a book with 3 of them. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock, we're going to be discussing a book, 3 of us, for 3 grandsons and myself. It works. It works. I'm developing friendships with my grandsons, true friendships, not grandfather, grandson sort of thing. It's friendships based on shared interest. It really works, and it's wonderful. And I definitely think C.S. Lewis and the early Greeks are right about the basis of friendship is shared interest. So the bottom line, one of the things is how could this person born in the boondocks of the Roman Empire, who never wrote a book, never traveled more than 200 miles from home, most of his followers were dirt poor. He had never held a political office, never led an army, none of that. He only taught 3.5 years. He was executed as a criminal. How could that person have such an amazing impact on all the important areas of culture? If you can get somebody to think about that, you're on your way, I think. It's, I think, potentially powerful. So always be ready. You have to be intentional. Remember, souls are at stake, and it takes time and this and that, but the time is worth it. The people are worth it. His cultural impact gives you lots of ammunition if you choose to use it. So that's it. Questions, comments?
Sorry, I have a comment. So my mother just died 10 months ago, and she used to talk. I really appreciate what you said, Ray, about souls are at stake. And she used to say something about we need to yank people out of hell. And I just recently read a quote by Charles Spurgeon a few weeks ago that keeps playing in my mind, that if people go to hell, it should be over our bodies.
Our dead bodies.
Our dead bodies?
No, our bodies.
Our bodies, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So thank you.
That's a great quote. That's a great way to say it, I think. So.
Anyone else? Come on, folks. A lot of really good food for thought there, Ray. I thank you very much. That's
it's a wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just make a comment. I read that book, and I found it a fascinating read. The only issue is I can't remember most of it. So actually, I do appreciate you going over some of the highlights from that book again. I read this book maybe I don't know, 2 years ago or thereabouts, and yes, there are some comments, a few that he made that I've actually used in some of my outreach. So I appreciate going over the book again. That's just comments. No
actually, I think the book's a great resource. You don't have to remember any of it. The only thing you have to remember is he looked into every area of culture and thought about how to relate it to Jesus. So all you have to do is look into the person you're looking at, the person in front of you, find out what area of culture that excites them and interests them, and then go to the book and use it as a reference book, as a start of your research to how to reach that person. So you don't have to remember anything, which is good because I have trouble remembering.
Yes.
Ray, I was going to ask you. I had to leave the room for a little bit, so I missed part of your talk. But before that, I remember that you pointed out that in addition to the book, Wallace has all sorts of resources that he's made available to people to make many of the points that you made as well. So can you talk about those a little bit more?
Oh yes, yes. If you buy his book on his Cold Case Christianity website, there's a way you can prove that you bought one of his books, and then if you put the order number or something in there, he will give you access to download research materials relating to that book and overheads you can use to teach from the book. For example, in Person of Interest, there was over 500 slides. I only used a few of them, but it had 500 slides. Every illustration in that book, you would get a overhead, a slide. I'm sorry, I'm dating myself. A slide that's in that book. And so he is trying to encourage people to spread that word. So he gives those research, that resource, but also every one of his references. In his book, he has about, I don't know, 40, 50 pages of references, but that's just the beginning. His actual reference pages are hundreds and hundreds of pages, and you can download that too and research any part of any chapter that you want. And he does that for every book. For example, he just reissued Cold Case Christianity, which is basically the defense of the scriptures and the reliability of the scriptures. And if you buy that book, you can get, I think it's only 300 overheads. There's only 300 illustrations in that book and all the references. So he wants to encourage people with a scholarly bent to use those materials.
John Cano.
Looks like John Cano has a hand raised.
Yes, a comment and then a question. My comment is I wish you had covered more about mathematics, but I know you have a time constraint. So my question is, have you ever met J. Warner Wallace?
I've been on live Zoom sessions with him. He has something called a community that gave us access to him once a month for about an hour and a half to answer whatever questions we had. So yeah, I feel like I know him as a friend. He's a super wonderful human being. He has his own church. I mean, I could go on and on about his various ministries, but so yes, I do feel I know him, and I'm blessed by knowing him.
In an earlier version of this presentation, you were using some of the videos. You didn't talk about the videos. I mean, you mentioned that you weren't going to show them, but can you talk about some of the videos that are available?
Oh yes, on his website, Cold Case Christianity, there are literally thousands of videos, some of them fairly short, that powerfully answer pretty much any question that anybody could address to you about the Christian apologetics and evangelism strategies and all kinds of things. Yeah, his Cold Case Christianity website is a wonderful resource. I didn't show the videos because they take a lot of time, and that was one of my problems. The previous versions of this were quite lengthy, and people would go to sleep and all that.
No, they didn't go to sleep. I'm pretty sure that I never saw anybody going to sleep.
But by the way, if there is some area, like you say, mathematics, if you email me, you'll have, when you get the overheads, or the slides, I should say, you'll have my email address. I'll be happy to dig into it and find some things that may at least get you started. But one of the things he did in his book is he got some quotes from scientists in a number of different fields, and he says, from all these quotes, you can put together the Gospel of Mark kind of thing. I mean, so it's amazing. It's amazing how much science people have written about Christianity. Well, John Lennox is a fantastic example. He's a mathematician and a powerful Christian apologist and evangelist. Are you familiar with John Lennox?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if you want a math reference, I'd start with John Lennox for Christian.
I guess another good example of a mathematician would be Newton.
Sir Isaac Newton.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, Newton, he did some math out of the Bible, and he says I think it's 2060 is the tribulation. I meant to track that down, but it's one of the many things I haven't tracked down yet. But yeah, Newton's big time Christian.
I just have been reading a book, a popular book on Fermat's last theorem, and it has a fairly concise history of much of mathematics. And I would say the majority of the prominent mathematicians were men of faith. Euler was very, very firm in his faith, for example.
Euler.
Oh. And the very first time I met this guy over here, Kirk, he was giving a talk about scientists who were Christians, which motivated their research into science. And he told me later that he agreed with everything the speaker said that evening.
But yeah.
Yeah,
a lot of the early scientists, were Christians, more so than the general population at the time.
I have a friend whose life career is supercomputer modeling, and he looks at the Bible and he says there's math all through the Bible, so he and probably many of those mathematicians, he thinks that's how God thinks. He sometimes reverts to the lower form of communication, language, but math is how he thinks. So.
Well, I would argue that God created mathematics before he created the physical universe.
Yeah, sounds like you've been talking with my friend, because that's what he thinks.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think the language of God is mathematics. I think Francis Collins got it wrong. It's not DNA, it's mathematics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just in fact, our church right now and a sister church are doing a series about apologetics right now. It's very good. And Kirk was one of the speakers. And one of the things he pointed out was that 2 and 2 is 4 whether somebody is there or not. Just the idea of it predating the universe.
Yeah,
possibly.
so it's kind of interesting from a perspective of naturalism. Where do you get mathematical laws and mathematical truth? It just doesn't come out of the natural world. It pre-exists the natural world.
Yeah.
Even if there had been no Big Bang, 2 + 2 would still have been 4. So, where do truths like that come from? So a naturalist really can't be a complete naturalist. He has to be naturalist plus, has to add mathematics to it, as well as nature.
Anyone else? Any other comments, questions?
Yeah, so maybe still on the topic of mathematics, right? There seem to be two schools, and I don't know the relative size of these schools about these mathematical theorems, right? Mathematical theorems, whether these are the product of the human mind or whether they are actually truths that are discovered, right? And I've seen this notion in some of my math textbooks, right? Are these sort of these mathematical theorems? Are they, or these laws? Are they invented in the product of someone's mind or the mathematician's mind, or does he simply discover truths that exist?
No, I would argue that they're discovered, and one of the arguments I would make in that regard is independent developments of branches of mathematics by people that were not in any communication with each other. For example, non-Euclidean geometry was developed in parallel by people, and to me that means that it pre-existed. I mean, the given axioms, the consequences of those axioms are there before a proof is developed. About
okay. Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yes.
Yeah, I remember taking plane geometry as a sophomore in high school, and that developing all of those proofs, and it's clear that those were pre-existing before anybody came along and said, well, here's a triangle, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Yeah. So is it only because we invented a triangle? I don't think so.
Yes.
Gavin Ortland has a good recent book where he has a chapter on mathematics and a chapter on music as evidence for God.
Mm-hmm.
We had him speak to us about a year ago, if you remember, a year and a half ago.
Right.
Another evidence for the existence of God is chocolate.
Don't say that.
What does chocolate reveal?
Wait a minute.
About the
I think
existence of God?
we're getting off topic here. Yeah, let's try to keep it with something that Ray can answer. Although that's fun. I have to admit that's fun.
God invented fun.
We could keep on going here. I don't want to keep Ray up, and after all, it is it's 11 o'clock there now, or after 10 minutes after 11 for him. So if we have any useful questions, I'm open to them, but let's give him a break if you all are done.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. So going.
Hi,
You got
everyone.
Marina.
Yeah.
Marina, go ahead.
I just wanted to say hi, everyone. It's great to be with you guys today, and thank you, Ray, for that great presentation. That was wonderful. It's really, really important. We can definitely use it, especially in this day and age, in different apologetic ways and in evangelism. So I really appreciated that. And the discussion now is fabulous, as always. And I wanted to share this book also. It's a small book. It's called Scientific Facts About the Bible, and it's by Ray Comfort. It's a very small book, and it says 100 Reasons to Believe the Bible is Supernatural in Origin. Ray, he wrote this a few years ago, but he has a lot of really neat chapters in there talking about how a lot of scientific discoveries, are in the Bible before science even discovered them. But there's also a chapter about scientists and how they're so many were Christians, and also about historical figures and how they were Christians as well. So I thought maybe you guys might like looking into this. It's a very small book, but it talks a lot about what we were talking about now in the discussion. But I think Ray and his team might be young Earth creationists. But it's okay. The book is it's still a good book though, to look at. Just a lot of good references, and it's a fun little book to read. I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Thank you, Marina. All right. Well, I'm going to close this meeting with a word of prayer, and I'll continue to stick around a while, but you know, I don't think we should ask Ray to do that because it is pretty late there. So let's pray. Lord God, thank you so much for the opportunity that we have to gather together this way and to learn more about you, and especially such inspiring things as were presented tonight by Ray from the book of J. Warner Wallace. Just amazing to know how influential the person of Jesus has been, and continues to be on all of the various different aspects of humanity, you know, from religion to science to art to music. We just praise you, Lord, that Jesus that you are so amazing, an amazing God in three persons. And we just praise you and worship you. And we just ask you that you would be with us now as we go on to our very many activities. Please give us the inspiration we need to speak about you and to bring others to faith in you. We pray these things in Jesus' precious name. Amen.